Hello, everybody. My name is Penny Gregory, and I am the Assistant Director of Special Services for the MSD of Wayne Township. Today, I want to talk to you about anti-racism and social and emotional learning. Social and emotional development is a lifelong and reflection-driven process. It should be considered and understood as a complex, dynamic, ongoing, and culturally adaptive process. So why SEL and racial equity? Schools are changing. Schools across the United States are becoming way more diverse linguistically, racially, ethnically. There's a lot of otherness that is happening. Minoritized groups are becoming the majority in a lot of places. You can have two students in the same classroom and one student feel safe and supported and the other one not feel that way. Also, most existing social and emotional learning frameworks have not considered explicitly the connections between students' cultural assets in their social and emotional development. And if educators and leaders implement social and emotional learning without regard to students' assets, so their cultural, racial, ethnic, linguistic, or economic backgrounds, then some students may feel more alienated. We like to talk about Dr. Dina Simmons' work a lot here in the Office of Special Services, and I want to share with you two quotes from her. The first one, talking about how important it is to have context around social and emotional learning, because if not, it can backfire. She says here, when I do social and emotional learning trainings, it's like kids with special needs need this more, or our Black and brown children need this more, as if because they're not calm enough. But teachers, and our input here also, administrators or any adult who works with students, they need to understand, we need to understand ourselves, and we need to recognize our own power and privilege and identity and what that means in the work that we do and the people with whom we work. So making sure that we are doing adult-led social emotional learning first, because without context, it becomes harmful. Finally, she says social and emotional learning, or SEL, without an anti-racist framework. So again, considering those assets, risk becoming white supremacy with a hug. So I want to share that in the MSD of Wayne Township, we want equity to be at the intersection of all of our work, including understanding and implementing social and emotional learning. I have highlighted here some very important points from an email sent out to the Wayne community by our Superintendent, Dr. Jeff Butts. We cannot and will not ignore the necessity of addressing inequities in schools. Some of the points highlighted here really speaks to everyone coming aboard and making sure that they have a voice in combating these inequities. Also, it's our responsibility to be a leader in this work and dismantling white privilege and structural racism. And again, even through the work of social and emotional learning. It's very real, the conversations that we are having in the book. So you want to talk about race. One of the points in the book was, if a person of color says it's about race, then guess what? It's about race. These conversations are real, and we need to stand together. We need to stand together with our students, with our staff, and with our community. If not, we risk something that Dr. Bettina Love has coined as spirit murdering. What is spirit murdering? Well, in the context of schools, it's the denial of inclusion, protection, safety, nurturance, and acceptance because of fixed yet fluid and moldable structures of racism. If we are not careful, we will kill our students. And I say that not lightly, because the one thing we want to do is nurture and love our students so that they can be authentically and completely who they are in the spaces we provide them to learn in. So how do we do that? We ensure that as practitioners that we are thinking about strength-based social and emotional learning, that we're capturing cultural assets, that we're considering contextual factors, that we're focusing on adult social and emotional learning. So let's go back a little bit. So when we talk about capturing assets, we're talking about framing student behaviors and skills not in a deficit manner. That can often do more harm than good. We have to not look at what they cannot do, but how we are assessing and look at what they are able to do. We must consider how notions of social and emotional competencies can be expanded to include multiple orientations, skills, and abilities of students from diverse backgrounds. So we need to consider the question, how can students demonstrate social and emotional growth through multiple means? Let's think about contextual factors. So we're thinking about things like environment, race, language, and culture. These things greatly influence the way that students respond, the way they make decisions, and the way they perceive themselves and others. We have to consider these factors of the learning environment to make students, especially those farthest from opportunities, feel safe and supported. So consider this question: do students feel safe making social and emotional learning mistakes, and then learning from those mistakes? Do they feel safe enough to make a mistake? Finally, we need to focus on adult social and emotional learning. As educators, we shape how students experience school every day. Therefore, educators' social and emotional competencies impact how students experience school and also how they develop. So, are we addressing our own biases? And then once we have, how can we use social and emotional learning to more effectively interact with and facilitate the growth of students from diverse backgrounds? A couple of resources that we've used here in the MSD of Wayne Township definitely has been Dr. Renee Aziz. She's the founder and director of Virtuoso Education Consulting company that supports educators statewide in Indiana and also nationally with equity-focused best practices. She previously practiced as a school psychologist. And also Paul Gorski, he's an associate professor of integrative studies at George Mason University. He is the founder of Equity Literacy Institute and EdChange. And so one of the things that we implement here in the Office of Special Services, we think about mindset, skill set, and tool set. And that is something that Dr. Aziz has taught us to think about. First, how are people thinking about things? What's their mindset around this work? Giving them the skills they need to address some of those things. If there are some areas of growth, and there always are areas of growth, as I talked about at the beginning of this talk, this is a lifelong process. And then finally, the tool set. What are the things we're going to do? And then the other thing that we've been doing a lot of is using these sort of equitable questions that Dr. Gorski presented, which is who's benefiting from this decision, this initiative, this practice? Who's benefiting? Who's marginalized? How do we maximize benefit and eliminate marginalization? And then, is this, fill in the blank, whatever it is we're trying to do, an actual threat to racism? Those are some hard questions, but we have to ask ourselves those questions. So here's the call to action. You must find a way to get in the way and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. You have a moral obligation, a mission, and a mandate when you leave here to go out and seek justice for all. You can do it. You must do it. And that is from the late U.S. Representative John R. Lewis. So where will you start? We know that there are multiple barriers that stand in the way of achieving equity, including school resource allocation, existing community inequities, and biased perspectives. But educators and education leaders, we don't have total control over these factors, but we do have control over how we view ourselves, how we view our students, how we view our school community, the world, and then how we act on these perspectives. It starts with you. You can do it. You must do it. Thank you.